Ever go back and look at stuff celebrities have done? You know, before they got famous? Commercials are a great example of this. Like, it's kind of funny that,
I am the one who knocks.
actually just used to sell butt cream to your grandpa. But okay, what about video games? Well, there are a lot of great developer stories out there, some with histories spanning decades of work. But one of my favorites involves a little-known secret from one of the most beloved names in gaming. Before climbing through the ranks of Nintendo and becoming its president until his untimely passing, Satoru Iwata was a gifted coder whose commercial work goes all the way back to the 1980s. His genius and positivity have transformed gaming, from Super Mario right up to the Switch. But his playful spirit can even be found in one of the oldest Easter eggs ever coded. Okay, let's go back to the golden age of gaming. In 1980, Atari was dominating the market, and their sights were set on personal computers. Next to the Apple II and the TRS-80, Atari's PCs made for a crowded market. But a Canadian-founded company was about to make history and silence the competition. Commodore had released the PET a few years earlier, designed as a competitive business computer. And it was doing well, but by now they needed something more powerful and more ubiquitous. So armed with a color graphics chip from their designers, they began making a low-cost home computer. And by the end of 1980, Commodore had disrupted two markets at once, with this. The Commodore VIC-20, video interface chip, 20-character display, limitless software with a $299 launch price. It was computing for the masses, not the classes. With this small bread bin, Captain Kirk himself ushered in a new generation of gamers and coders, and this newly tapped market would eventually make it the first computer ever to sell 1 million units. But there were some issues. Back in 1980, 5 kilobytes of RAM was pretty underpowered. There was no dedicated video mode either, and therefore no easy way to make video games. So Commodore looked eastward to launch their PC and to help make some games. In 1980 Japan, the demand for consumer electronics was exploding. With the PC market also taking off, it was the perfect place to try out the VIC-20. And knowing software would be key to its success, Commodore turned to licensing arcade ports. Like a console, the VIC-20 could use cartridges, boosting the system's RAM and its sales. And one of the few companies in the world that could do it was HAL Laboratory in Tokyo. They had carved a niche by ripping off arcade hits for the Commodore PET, as it happens. And this was a big deal. The PET was a business machine so rigid you couldn't even change the font. But HAL made a device that could alter the system's character set and produce their own games. And this important piece of technology opened the door for one particularly talented coder. Satoru Iwata, born in 1959, was just 19 when he bought a PET. And at the Tokyo Institute of Technology, he became an intern for Commodore Japan. This exposure to devices like HAL's font editor meant he could make games for the system. So when the time came to make games for the VIC-20, Iwata was more than ready. Taking everything he knew from the PET, he used the VIC-20's changeable character set. And before long, you could find many of the biggest arcade titles on a Commodore. Of course, Iwata didn't make all of them, but the game he did make is pretty interesting. This is Star Battle, Satoru Iwata's very first commercial game, made while he was still in university. It released in 1981 alongside games like Jupiter Lander and Jelly Monster. Now, this time, HAL did have the license from companies like Namco to make these games in Japan. But in the US, Atari owned the right to make Pac-Man games, and they didn't approve of any clones. So while these games did release outside of Japan, their reach was limited and concessions were made. And eventually, due to corporate pressure and other factors, these games stopped shipping altogether. And that would have been the end of it. Games like Star Battle could have faded into obscurity. But Fate had different plans, both for this system and for the programmer who worked on it. Satoru Iwata left something behind, a message, buried in the code where no player could find it. But the VIC-20 bred curiosity, and its users started to become hackers in their own right. Hackers who would eventually look inside the ROM of cartridges like Star Battle. And in doing so, they would find a simple message. This program was written by Satoru Iwata. But its true purpose would not be realized for nearly 40 years after the game's release.
So all we have to do is change this 0 to a 1, and we can see the Easter egg.
In 2020, someone noticed that Iwata's message was more than just simple text. It contained color data and some code which suggested that it was at one point meant to be seen. But the game as released only ever mentions Commodore Japan as its developer. Other games made by HAL had a similar treatment, with their Easter eggs disabled before release. But thanks to people like Robin at 8-Bit Show and Tell, we can get a glimpse of what could have been. At the game menu, a sequence of keys is pressed, and a special message appears on screen. The name, time, and location of the person solely responsible for this game's development. And that's it, a fleeting look at the first of many personal victories for a legendary designer. We have the privilege of hindsight now, but things could have turned out much differently. So regardless of who he would become, it's nice to see that he was just a happy person all along. What I'm saying is celebrate your victories, no matter what they are, and leave something behind. Put a little spontaneous positivity in everything you do. You never know who you might inspire. It can be as simple as some text, and I think that's what Satoru Iwata would want us to do. And if you enjoyed this story, please check out Robin's work on 8-Bit Show and Tell. His dedication to preserving gaming history is what inspired me to make this video.